I was born and raised in East London. I grew up in a predominantly Muslim area. It was predominantly a Bangladeshi area. And so I would see Muslims quite a lot. So I'm of mixed race. My mother is Italian and my father is Nigerian from West Africa. My father's background is very, very interesting because he was actually born a Muslim. My grandfather was Muslim. When my grandfather died long before I was born, my father left Islam. And so when he met my mother in London, he wasn't a Muslim. So I was never, brought up upon Islam. There was no form of Islam. He wasn't Muslim. So I remember going to church with my mother. I would go to church and spiritually and emotionally it would be very, very fulfilling. But I had questions. I couldn't understand how we were worshipping the Son of God. I couldn't understand how in one moment he was the Son of God and the next moment he was the Lord. But more importantly, he was a man, that he was a human being like myself. And I couldn't understand logically and rationally how I could worship another human being. That didn't sit right with me at a very, very young age. And so I questioned that. And I remember one particular day speaking to the pastor of the church and saying to him, and asking him this question. And he said, just have faith. And it was at that moment that I knew that this wasn't for me. I lived on the first floor. I was about 8 years old. I would go to the living room window, lean on the living room windowsill, and I would be able to see on the ground floor opposite the road from where I live. And there was a makeshift masjid. It was actually a container at the time. But from where I would lean as a child, I could see into the prayer area of this kind of makeshift mosque. And I found it fascinating. I remember one particular day, there was a huge fight between my mother and father. And I ran to my bedroom. I was about 8 years old. On my way to the bedroom, I took my mother's shawl. It was a beautiful kind of Asian shawl that she had been gifted by her Pakistani work colleague. And I took the shawl and I threw it onto the ground. And I made sujood. I prostrated and I said, God, and I remember I said, God, make them stop. Make them stop arguing. And at that time, obviously, I was a young child. I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but I was copying what I had seen in the masjid, and I felt that God would hear me because that was a position that was close to God. That's how I felt at the time. So that was kind of like my first experience of Islam. So fear overcame me. Fear reigned supreme at that time, to the point that I cut off from my friends. I threw away the articles, the leaflets, the cassettes. I put the Quran away. It was becoming too much for me mentally, emotionally. I was afraid of what I believed. I was afraid that I would have to change my life. I wouldn't say that I particularly loved my life, but I was free, right? And to give up your freedom is a very scary thing, particularly when you don't know what you may gain. And now I know what I have gained. These thoughts about the scientific proofs in the Quran, the existence of God, the proof of, the messengership. And it was just thought after thought after thought. And so I took myself out for a walk around where I lived at the time, just to get a bit of a breather. I came to a road that I would regularly cross. I stood there waiting for the green man, and the green man came and people were crossing and I just couldn't cross, not testifying to that which has already entered my heart. So I took myself home, called my friend. She picked up the phone, heard my voice, and she was just so happy to hear from me. And I said to her, I believe and I need to take my shahada. And that was the weekend, and the Monday I took my shahada. Alhamdulillah. Being the kind of overzealous, passionate, young person that I was at the time, the way that I told my mother was arriving home, knocking on the door, and her opening the door to me in hijab. And she looked at me completely confused, and I said, yes, I've become Muslim. And it was very, very difficult after that. I lost family, I lost friends, I lost a relationship with my mother. So there were a number of things that happened at the time. She was in a new relationship. That man had a hatred for Islam. He turned her against me. And I remember at the age of 17, it was a very painful moment when she said to me, she looked at me, I was 17, and she said, I've done my job. I no longer need to be your mother, and you're on your own. And that was very, very difficult. At that age, you need your family. And to be rejected by your mother is very, very painful. Very, very painful. Upon embracing Islam, I have gained my freedom, because freedom is removing the shackles placed by people. When you truly connect with your Creator and you connect with your purpose, you live for Him and you don't live for others. And that is true freedom.